Welcome in to another chapter of Haunted History. I'm Tim Renaud.
And I'm Christina Lobo.
Walk through a Charleston cemetery at night, and you may uncover a story from the Holy City's past. If you want to learn more about haunted history, consider becoming a paranormal investigator for the night. Joining us in the WCBD Plus Streaming Center is Nick McGurr, lead paranormal investigator with Stories in the Cemetery. Christina, you recently joined Nick for a paranormal investigation yourself.
Yes, and Nick, I had such a great time. How would you describe our experience to our viewers?
Wow. You guys actually had a really great night. So on our previous segment, we actually discussed the scoring system that I use, and your guys' night was pretty spot on. It was actually well above an above average score, which isn't something I see too often. Again, I can't dictate what happens through these investigations. It just happened to be that everybody did a nice job with the equipment, so we caught a lot of real-time moments.
And you mentioned that you had a scoring system. So tell us about it and how you rated our investigation.
So the scoring system is, first off, it's recognized internationally. There are psychical research societies that are now using it in their investigations, and I do have a workbook for other investigators to use it. And it was created because guests were starting to ask me on the experiences, how haunted was this? And I didn't have an answer. So I created a way to be able to score it fairly, and then just starting using it nightly. And my business partner said, this is a gold mine. Everybody should be using this instead of saying everything's the most haunted. Now we'll have a way to do that. As far as the score that your tour received, it was a 67, I believe, which falls into my undeniable proof of the afterlife. That is 2 levels above average, which is something that I would normally see. So I was when I tallied it up, I was like, holy cow, there's a lot here. I had to leave you guys lots of notes. There was plenty of links in there. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least peruse through it. But there was a lot happening, and there was a personal effect that happened with the other guests, which always makes it super fun. It wasn't the ghost of Charleston. It was a ghost they brought with them.
Right, and tell us a little bit about that.
So if you recall, it was during what is called an Estes method session, where I will blindfold 1 or 2 of my guests, and they will wear a spirit box with a headphone.
And I was one of them.
Yes, you were. And what goes on here is that the spirit box sweeps through radio stations, and I ask the guests to tell us whatever they hear. Not necessarily the quote-unquote disembodied voices like what is claimed on the TV shows, but the radio chatter. I love using the radio chatter because you learn more about your ghost this way by collecting words. And I ask questions to my alleged ghost at that location that I feel is tied to Charleston. But what was happening was the 2 people, you included, were giving us words that were relevant from a recently passed loved one of the family that came with us, and including their name. So it was very interesting that they felt like they had somebody with them, and it touched them, on the heart a little bit. So they got pretty emotional, and I gave back the video and I rewatched it because I always like to kind of go back and see if there's anything going on there. But yeah, it was a really good moment. It's a rare moment that I get guests that will have that personal touch. But when it does occur, it's really cool to watch instead of just me telling stories and my ghosts here in Charleston, talking back.
Right, and I want to mention when I was saying this name, it wasn't a common name to me. So when I'm saying these words, I was just repeating what I was listening to, but it's not something I was familiar with, or I could just be like, oh, it was Charles Anderson. It kind of caught me off guard when I was talking about it.
So to, I guess, enlighten that, I keep the people that are blindfolded through this experiment in the dark of who the ghost actually is. I teach part of the group, the history of the ghost, and then we come back. So that way, the blindfolded are literally blind in knowledge as well. So that's a huge part of this, and it's a controlled experiment to make sure there's no influence of what you think might be happening. I just want you to repeat what you hear, and while I'm asking questions, and the guests can't hear me.
Right, it was a great experience and definitely something cool to be a part of. Following our investigation, how much do you think of our experience matched with the reporting of the hauntings or legends in the location, especially our first one?
So with the Pinckney Mansion site, which is what I spoke about earlier, I feel like we had a lot of subtle clues coming through. And with me reviewing the data and only doing a spot check, I know I missed a lot. And I say that because I leave most of the work to you, the guest. That's the whole fun part is when we part ways. Your experience isn't over. You get to go through all the media and the data to be able to find more. So I found some breadcrumb clues. They could be vague, they could be nothing, but at least there was a link there for you to have more information. So when you go through the media for yourself, you might discover more.
And did any of the locations that we went to, did some of them feel a little bit more active to you compared to others?
So I was pretty happy with, obviously, our Estes method session. So that was almost off the charts of how I rank those sessions separately, just based off of we had clues to our ghost and things that were personal to the other guests. So that's not something that I normally see. I normally get one person coming through, not two or more. So I felt like the Estes method session was actually pretty hardcore for like what we were doing. There are some nights where that ghost doesn't want to come through at all, and the score for the session is a 0. So for us to have, I want to say we had close to 10 direct answers. I was pretty impressed with that.
You mentioned there's a spirit that follows you when we were in the alley. Can
Sure.
you tell us about that?
Sure. So there's a very common tale that's told in Philadelphia Alley about the whistling doctor. And what I realized, I tried to take him out of my route just because I don't always like to tell the stories that all the other tours are telling. Like, I want to give that extra piece of history. And the problem with a whistling doctor ghost is it's kind of a cliche, right? It's like the lady in white. And with him, I started to notice we were getting a lot of the same clues nearby. And then I would capture whistles on some of the recordings. And I was kind of like, is he following me? So over time, I eventually gave him a code word to come through to let me know that he's nearby. And it's not a common word you would normally hear from a radio station from the spirit box sweeps, nor is it something that I carry with me, in regards to what the word is. We did have that word show up last night. So I was quite surprised, but we had other subtle clues, but I think the other two ghosts that were coming through during that session were a lot stronger than him at that location, so we didn't hear a whole lot from the whistling doctor.
How do you go about giving a code word?
So, and this is kind of a ritual. So on my way to the meeting point of where I meet all of the guests for the start of the tour, I'm talking to the ghosts. And just letting them know, like, the staple locations that I go to. And I'll be quite honest, with the Pinckney Mansion site, I walk through there every single night, and I read off the list of the names of the guests that I'm bringing into her home, just out of respect. I've had instances in the past where I've had, we'll just say, some disrespectful, not sober guests, and kind of messing around in that location disrespectfully. And we had some very nasty disembodied messages coming through, meaning it was not the radio chatter. So I was able to verify those. I gave the space a break and just kind of made a little pact with her. Like, I will bring people to your home. We will be respectful. And I'm sure, Christina, you can account for this. I talked about respect.
He did a lot.
Several times, especially with that location, just because of who this woman was and the demeanor that she holds from her own time period in the 1700s.
Right, and we did find some interesting facts, or I would say findings, when we were on there. I got the number 4 twice.
Correct. So with that, you and I initially had the clue of, Eliza was married in 1744. So we were kind of stretching it a little bit, and I was kind of like, I'll write it down, like, just to see if something else pops up. And what happened after that was I did my next follow-up with the other person with the spirit box, and they immediately said, I just heard the number 44. So there's our validation that you heard a 4 twice, and then I was like, it's a maybe, and then he gets the 44, like, yes, I want to talk about my marriage today. So yeah, that is definitely a solid piece where you can go back and get that real-time finding.
Now, was there anything that you were hoping to happen that didn't?
Not necessarily. I never go in with hopes of anything. I usually kind of go in with an open mind of nothing might happen tonight.
Right.
We might have a little to no activity, and what I need to do is make sure my guests leave knowledge about the equipment that I taught them about, and obviously be enthralled with the history. So, me as a storyteller, that's really the main goal. The findings are the bonus. If we get anything, I'm excited. This might be the demeanor that I show during the tour, that we're excited because it might be a common trend that I see. But at the same time, it's a matter of let's have some fun with the equipment, keep an open mind, and let's talk about real, actual history instead of just urban legends, and not go necessarily after the scare factor.
And I want to mention something that I really enjoy being on your tour is that you give us a little bit of the history, and then you let us kind of investigate and find some pieces, and then we regroup, and then you kind of reveal some of the historic facts in the area.
And that's the super fun part about doing this. It's another part of the way I like to control each experiment at the location. So I do like to withhold information on purpose. And if you recall, I even did a little subliminal messaging just to kind of see if that was going to pop through. And unfortunately, Christina, you failed the subliminal message. But I do like to withhold that information just to control the experiment. So when things do pop up, you have no idea why you heard the number 44 or why you heard the color blue. There are things that I do throughout the night to control the experiment, or I'll keep somebody in with me on my secret. I'll pull one guest aside and say, we're going to use this, and we're going to ask Eliza a direct question that I did not assign. So let's see if we get the answer, and they don't know what the question is.
All right, we're going to take another break. We'll have more on the investigation on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're here with Nick McGurr, lead paranormal investigator and owner of Stories in the Cemetery, talking about a recent investigation in downtown Charleston.
And Nick, what kind of equipment do you typically use during investigations like this?
So I like to put things in categories, and there's always paranormal cameras. We use 3 different styles of paranormal cameras. Lots and lots of communication. Me as a writer, like keywords and communication is verifiable proof for me, so I use a lot of different types of spirit boxes, word generators, and then of course there's always like live EVP sessions and using amplified voice recorders for any types of extra noise. And then of course for safety, we always use a lot of different types of EMF detectors, so that's electromagnetic field meters. But there are primary pieces that I like to use for sure, that even with a smaller group, they're kind of my staples.
And can you show us maybe some of the equipment that you have here and a brief explanation of what it does?
Sure. So we'll start off. I always introduce the thermal imaging camera. So I will put this, a little bit on me so folks can get the gist of like how this actually works. So you should be able to see some of my skin in there. And what this does is it detects any type of thermal imaging. So it's going to be cold and hot. Obviously, you can see the blue on the screen. That would be my beard because it is much cooler than the shirt that is touching the heat of my skin. We're looking for cold anomalies with this, and we're normally looking for them to be about 15 degrees or colder when they're moving across the screen. On a previous segment, we discussed that cold figure, at the end of Philadelphia Alley. This is how we found them. I normally tell my guests with this particular camera, because I'm not a TV show host and YouTuber looking for the likes, that we capture about 4 to 5 pieces on this camera per year that I would put my stamp of approval on, not per episode. So that find that we had at a Philadelphia Alley was pretty significant. So this is a staple that I will use for at least half the night, and we'll normally switch things out. Bigger groups will keep this out the entire evening. So that is a FLIR thermal imaging camera. We talked about safety. This is what we call a meter. There are other tours, and most TV shows will use what they call a K2 meter, and just has indicator lights. But the indicator lights, and it doesn't detect some of the higher EMF readings that can actually occur when you have a true haunting, which is why I prefer not to use them at all. I might use them for some like communication of yes/no answers, but I like and prefer the meter just because it goes pretty high as far as reading the electricity in the air. Not to mention it does have a thermometer in case we find something in real time from the thermal imaging camera. So we can go find that quote-unquote cold spot and either prove or debunk what's actually happening in real time. So that is always a staple for me for safety measures. This is a preferred measure of a spirit box. I usually use this one as a staple because it is the only one on the market that actually records. And what I love about recording our sessions is because it's only going to record the radio sweep. It's not going to record anything from the outside, what kind of questions we're asking, but it does record the entire sweep. So if somebody claims to have heard something very direct, I can go back and verify that, and we have a recorded piece of evidence. So not to mention, with this one, if you're not going to use headphones with it, it does have a great internal speaker. So for anybody looking for spirit boxes, this is usually my preferred model that I'll use.
And that's what I used last night.
Yeah, so this has your fingerprints all over this. I mean, and you actually did a really nice job with it. So I'll be honest, listening to a spirit box is not an easy task. I have guests that they're not very good at it, and for me to tell them boldly, like, you're not really contributing because you're having a hard time hearing it. Again, it's about honesty. I'm like, let's pass it off to a family member. Let's see how your teenage son is going to hear the staticky noise coming through, and we'll just pass it off. And last but not least, one of the extra pieces that I bring out, we only use it in Philadelphia Alley, is an amplified voice recorder. So this is actually meant for musicians, and any type of recording artist will, recognize the Zoom, logo brand. But with this particular recorder, we're not always listening for just voices, but with our whistling doctor, we're listening for his whistles. So we've caught quite a few since we started using this particular device down the alleyway. And I like to use this only in that location because this way I'm not spot checking it. I do listen to the whole thing from start to finish because we never know when something's going to actually pop up. So those are kind of some of the staples that I like to bring to the tour, no matter how many participants I'm going to have that particular night.
And kind of going off of that, what would you say is your favorite one or your go-to technology that you would use?
So I get asked this question quite a bit. So spirit box communication to me is key. Again, I feel like all of them are necessary, but if I can set the other pieces up and leave them alone or be recorded on their own with other types of cameras, I'm going to primarily use a spirit box, but I'm going to have another one recording in the background so I can verify one piece of equipment to the other. I always believe in two pieces of communication, just because nothing comes at face value.
I definitely enjoyed using the spirit box. It's something I would definitely want to try again, I would say.
So using a spirit box can be very addictive. If I get invited to another team to come help out with an investigation, which does happen, it's usually because of what I can do with a spirit box. I do have every model on the market. I'm not bragging about how much equipment I have. I'm literally showing how much time I spend going through the data from the previous night's investigation in Charleston. I probably have more listening time to a spirit box than any paranormal investigator out there. So I'm usually called in to do Estes method sessions, or to run, my way of using spirit boxes, one slow, one fast, and then listening to all of that later just to find out who's truly haunting the location.
And you mentioned those sessions that we did. I know we spent about 10 minutes. Kind of explain why you say that 10 minutes is kind of a happy medium to do.
Your example last night was actually perfect. We actually went over 10 minutes. The guest, because they were getting such a personal response, asked if we can continue. So I usually don't take any notes during those sessions because I want to make sure your breathing is okay. I want to make sure there's no nervousness going on with fingers and scratching, or your legs are moving a little bit, because it can cause some anxiety when you are going through a sensory deprivation or a sensory heightened, because there is another portion of this that we haven't discussed yet. That actually we used last night that was correlated to some of the conversation that had. But yeah, it can be a little disorienting for people that aren't used to being blindfolded and a heightened sense of hearing, and you're getting that staticky noise in there. It can cause some dizziness.
All right, well, we're going to take another break, but we'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're talking about how you can participate in a paranormal investigation right here in Charleston.
And Nick, I just want to say thank you for letting me come along for for your paranormal investigation. It was my first experience being able to be one. For the future, what tips do you have for me?
I would say if you're going to continue on this road and want to learn more, research is always key. But as far as equipment, I would say at least some type of millimeter that we talked about for safety, and any type of communication device, whether that be a spirit box. There are even some apps out there that I recommend, and you should have gotten that in your report, because I always want to make sure people leave fully informed if they want to continue. But those are kind of the three main basics. Camera work is great, but it is rare to find those things. You're going to find way more by using those three key items.
And earlier we discussed about our experience. What is something that you would want our viewers to take away from it?
It's different every single time. I was surprised by the high score, and I believe I told you and the team last night that it was about an average night, but once I started going through it, it's always that nice surprise to say, holy cow, this was way more than an average night. Because when you look at it as a whole, instead of bit by bit by bit, because you're in real time with the moment, it's huge to be able to go back. And I was smiling, typing in your 67 onto your report.
And Christina, if you could have a final word about your experience getting out there, using the equipment, being with Nick and the group, what would you say about the experience overall?
I would just say, to sum it up quickly, awesome, spooky. It was just a lot of fun. It makes me just want to learn more. I think I've always been kind of intrigued in the paranormal. When I was in like 4th grade, I did a little PowerPoint on it. So to be able to have a night and for Nick to allow me to be a part of it, that was just so much fun.
And Nick, I'll throw that to you now. What would be your one final word about what you do, about the paranormal experience overall? What would you say?
I would say I've dove in head first. And as far as, doing this full time and having, it's a business for me at this point, but, running my publications, having the SITSI scoring system, and being able to teach folks how to use the equipment is probably the funnest part of this, because I show them that it doesn't have to be super scary, and especially when you're dealing with ghosts that were once people. Yeah, I would say it's about respect and learning the actual history behind the haunting itself.
I'm not gonna lie, I definitely did go on Amazon and look at spirit boxes.
I think that is in her future here, but hey, why not? Well, Nick, this absolutely sounds like an incredible experience that people can join you for in downtown. We know all of these places downtown have a rich history that lives on forever, essentially. But thank you so much for sharing this experience with us.
That's all we have for this chapter of Haunted History. I'm Christina Lobo.
And I'm Tim Renaud. We'll see you on the other side.